The European Team Championship is one of the strongest and most important events in the calendar of every national player. And for chess players, there's also this factor of rating and experience. So strong teams usually face strong opponents, and a good performance will be rewarded with a lot of rating and a bad performance with a lot of lost rating. And the game we are going to take a look at is a really high encounter between the Super Grandmaster, the new Super Grandmaster, Martirosyan, and Ivan Saric. Ivan Saric is rated 2659, Martirosyan over 2700, and everything is ready for a high-level encounter. This being said, let's go to the game. White, Martirosyan plays first e4, black responds with knight to f6, white continues with c4, e6, knight to f3, and now d5. White's move order? Well, you might think there is no difference between playing d5 in the third move right now or in the first move. But let's go back and take a quick look. So d4, d5, c4, e6, knight to c3, knight to f6, and now you can see that the knight is still not on f3, and there is a huge difference between those variations, because now white could just take in the center and then play a move like bishop to g5, and the idea here is that white will play e3 and maybe f3 at some point, so he supports the e4 square. So this is the reason why many players play knight to f6 first, and only then after knight to f3 play d5. So this being said, let's go back to the game. Knight to c3 played. And now black has many responses like the semi-Slav with c6 or bishop to e7. And another option is the game move knight b to d7, the so-called Barman variation. I didn't know the name, I just looked up this position and saw that it has a name. And I also took a look in the database. The white player, Martirosyan, played this position from the white side and from the black side. From the white side, if I did count correctly, and I only considered games against strong opponents, he played it 10 times, and against strong white players, he played it with black 20 times. So he knows this position pretty well and has a lot of experience. So, and in many games he just continues with c takes d5, so he's still in his preparation, but not only in his preparation but also experience. He has played this several times as mentioned, and generally speaking, experience is as much important as preparation, maybe a little bit more, because you just know how to handle the positions. However, we are talking about a game between a player rated 2700 and a player slightly less. So these players surely know what they are doing. E takes d5 was played. And now queen to c2, c6, and bishop to g5. And still Martirosyan had this 5 times with white and 4 times with black. Just to have mentioned that. Now black played a very interesting idea. When I saw this position, I thought, okay, so this knight is maybe a little bit badly placed. Usually you want to develop the knight later, not so early. So what to do? I thought the most logical move here is bishop to e7. What is your opinion? Let me know what you think about black's position and what he should play in the comment section. And in the game, Saric, the black player, played h6. And I thought, okay, the bishop must retreat to h4, and this was also played. And I thought it would be funny if black would play something like g5, because this is completely risky. The king of black is still in the center. The pieces are not developed apart except the knights. And already h6 g5 is played. But this is one of the main ideas in this position. So bishop to g3 played, and now knight to h5, and here we see the idea. Black just wants to eliminate the knight on g3 and get the pair of bishops. So white can play a move like e3, but the most popular move here is queenside castling. So white brought his king to safety. The black king is still in the center. What does black do? Of course, he played knight h5, and now he takes on g3. There is no other idea behind knight h5. So h takes g3, and now g4 played, and we are still in theory, or at least in some strong games. And in this position, Vladimir Kramnik, a former world champion, chose to play knight to h4, and this is a good move. Martirosyan played another good move in this position, and this is knight to d2. The idea here is playing e4. So bishop to g7 was played, putting pressure on the d4. And now it's very important. White should play e4 in this position. And it looks like a pawn sacrifice, but the bishop cannot take on d4 due to e takes d5, and the position just opens and black is in big trouble because the c file is controlled by the queen on c2. So after c takes d5, a move like knight takes d5 is very dangerous because of knight to c7 check. The bishop in the center is not well placed. The king is not developed. Black is completely lost. So instead, what black should do is just castle, and then might follow e takes d5 and c takes d5. And the position is either slightly better for white or equal. It's not clear, but I believe it is black who needs to know what he is doing. Also, white shouldn't blunder, obviously, but if I had the choice, I would take white here. So let's go back. Instead, Martirosyan played the slightly less active e3, and now black could have responded with something like knight to f6, but as it looks like, black was really in a fighting move and played queen to f6. A slightly dubious move, because what is the queen doing on f6? It's attacking the f2 pawn, but the f2 pawn can just be pushed like in the game to f4. And now the last thing black wants to do is taking en passant here, because then g takes f3 and white has a great position. So this is nothing black wants to achieve. So therefore black just castled. And now white should really play the move e4. This is a very forced sequence because black really should take on d4. And after knight to c4, queen back to f6, there's e5, queen e7, and now the point of this entire combination, the pawn sacrifice, knight to d6, and g4 looks a little bit weak here. Bishop to d3 might come, knight takes c8 at some point, and black's position is not very pleasant. Also, knight to f5 might be very dangerous at some point. But let's go back. This was not played. e4 was not played. Instead, bishop to d3. So Martirosyan develops. But e4 had been a little bit better. And now black attacks on the queen side, because this is where the white king is. And now, again, e4 was playable, then queen takes d4, knight b3, queen b6, and e5, and again the same game. But this time there's a slightly different idea. The idea is that the knight will have a great square on d4, and then maybe jump to other squares. The c5 push here is not really possible because these pawns would be very weak. So let's go back. Also e4 here was not played. Martirosyan played king to b1, and black continues with knight to b6 and suddenly starts getting some pieces on the queen side. So the king might be in danger. Now e4 was played, a little bit late, but okay. Queen takes d4, and Martirosyan found a very strong move here. e5. Now the queen is cut off from retreating to the king side, but also this bishop on g7 looks just weak. So another issue is that this queen is almost trapped after knight to b3, but only almost. So black played knight to a4, getting the b6 square for the queen, then followed knight takes a4, pawn takes a4, and now white could have played knight to c4, queen to c5, check on h7 once, king h8, and now knight to d6, and again black is a pawn up, but this time the structure of black is really bad, and it's white who is enjoying an advantage in this position. But unfortunately Martirosyan played the tempting knight to f3, and the obvious idea is to bring the knight to the king side. So he wants to attack the opponent's king. However, knight to c4 had been better. Queen to b6 played, and now there is probably the last chance for white to save the game with a move like knight to h4, rook b8, then bishop h7 check, king h8, and bishop f5. And this position bears still some risks for black. Black should really calculate precisely, then he will get most likely a draw, because the pressure on b2 is just too much. Instead, white checked on h7 immediately, and this was not the best choice. King h8, and now knight to g5. Instead, knight to h4 again had been probably around equal. Knight to g5, and he missed something. So rook b8 played, so the queen needs to defend the b2 square. Rook to d2, and now f6. And as you can see, this knight on g5 is trapped. It has no squares. This square is controlled by the d pawn. These squares are controlled. This bishop is controlling this e6 square. The rook is controlling the f7 square. And the knight is in big trouble. So e takes f6 was played. And now the strong rook takes f6 was played. Rook e2. And black is winning because he's going to have this combination of too much pressure here and also the weak pieces. Bishop to g6 played, and black first tries to attack on the king's side, and b3 was played. And now there is this pin, so the knight was saved somehow, but black is just continuing the attack. So the price of saving the knight was basically running into a very bad position, and now there are already mating threats. So from a practical point of view, the knight was just lost. Rook to e5 played, a desperate attempt. Rook to b7, bishop d3, and now a5. King to c1, queen a1 check. Now queen to b1 and bishop takes e5, and of course exchanging the queens doesn't work for white, because then he just lost a piece, because the bishop just took the rook on e5. So rook takes h6 played, check, king to g8, f takes e5, and now queen c6 check, c3 check, excuse me, and the king is very weak. So king to d1, rook f2, very devastating, again threatening mate here. Rook to g6 check, rook g7, bishop e2, and black decided the game by bishop f5, and now white just resigned because white is going to lose more material. For example, saving the queen doesn't work because you just exchange, and then you can decide which piece you take. Actually, this position was completely lost after knight to g5. So this f6 idea was very strong at this point. And as you can see, after e takes f6, the knight survives somehow, but the cost is that bishop and knight are completely out of the game, and this wasn't good. As always, I hope you enjoyed the game. If you want to see another very instructive game of Martirosyan, then click on this video right next to me. If you like this video, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe the channel. See you.